Hey everybody, welcome to CAF Warbird Tube, the show where we talk about World War II, aviation, history, and so much more. Warbird Tube is produced by the Commemorative Air Force, the world's largest flying museum. Our mission is to educate, inspire, and honor through flight and living history experiences. The CAF began the Warbird movement more than 65 years ago, and thanks to the support of individuals like you, we continue to grow strong. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and now our host, Steve Buss. Thanks for watching and keep them flying.
Well, good evening and welcome to everyone watching tonight on Facebook, YouTube, and those of you on GoToMeeting. If you can do us a favor before we get started and you haven't already done so, please take a second to like or share and hit the subscribe button and follow us. And if you do subscribe on YouTube, also click that little bell icon and you'll get notifications about new episodes of Warbird Tube, especially when we go live. Now, as you're watching tonight's episode, you might have some questions. Just type them in the comments section of whatever social media platform you're on, and we'll try to answer them either during the presentation or before we sign off. You are watching episode 81 of Warbird Tube, and tonight we take a look at Project Recover, a dedicated group using technology to track down missing airmen from World War II. So joining me this evening are Derek Abbey, Colin Colburn, and Scott Campbell. Good evening, gentlemen, and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, we'll get a little background on each of you. So, Derek, we'll start with you. What's your background in aviation, and how did you become involved in the project?
Well, those are actually two connected pieces. I was an F-18 aviator. I was an F-18 Wizzo, and at the time I was serving in BMFA 121, and went to a World War II reunion, much like those that watched the film saw. And it was there that I first met Pat Scannon, our founder. Him and I became fast friends, and he invited me to be in the organization. This was more than 18 years ago, and so I was deploying quite a bit at the time. It took me a while to go on my first mission, but then finally went on my first mission and was a part of Discovery that year. And from then on, I was hooked, and then grew up in the organization as a member, and then a mission commander. Ultimately, when we grew the nonprofit, a board member, and then for the last 3 years, I've been the president and CEO of the organization. But a career in the Marine Corps led to my connection to Project Recover, and now it's an ongoing career in Project Recover.
Awesome. Colin, what about you?
Yeah, I've been with Project Recover for 6 years now. When I got out of graduate school, I actually had a historical fellowship with the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency. And that certainly got me hooked into answering these questions for families and solving these decades-old, historical mysteries. And once I saw that Project Recover was starting to pick up and go global, I, after having worked a little bit with Pat Scannon, I was able to convince them to allow me on board and become the lead historian.
There you go. And Scott, one of our own, he's a CAF member. Scott, welcome.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Actually, it was my CAF experience that gave me the knowledge to impress Derek. It's kind of funny. Derek and I were in 121 together, and we hadn't seen each other in a number of years. We were at a change of command ceremony, and I bumped into him. I was like, "Oh my goodness, you're a major!" And he looked at me and he was like, "Oh my goodness, they made you a lieutenant." And we kind of had a moment there about that. And I started talking. We just were catching up. What have you been doing? Where have you been? And I talked about my 5 years with Syntex Wing in San Marcos, flying the Yellow Rose, and first mech on the P-39 and a bunch of other things. And he goes, "Hey, I got a question for you." And he showed me a picture. And he goes, "You know what that is?" And I said, "Yeah, that's a prop, Governor." I said, "That's a Wright Cyclone 2800. I'm certain of that." And it was, coral encrusted. It was kind of ugly. It was underwater. And he's like, "Man, it took me forever to get that answer from the government." And I said, "Well, what are you doing that's a thing?" And we started talking about Project Recover. And this was back in, Derek, 2011, 2012 maybe. And I was like, I've got to be a part of this. So the minute that I retired from the Marines, I reached out and I was like, I want to be a part of this. What do I need to do? And that's kind of how it all unfolded.
All right. And you just completed your first mission with the organization, right?
I did, yes, sir. We in May in Palau.
All right. Well, before we get into the specifics of Palau and some of the other missions, we mentioned Pat and his original project, the Bent Prop Project, was sort of the predecessor of Project Recover. But Derek, walk us through the history of that organization and what is now Project Recover.
Yeah, the roots of Project Recover go back now close to 3 decades, and it was one person. You mentioned Pat Scannon. He was on a different mission, actually, in the nation of Palau, searching for a Japanese trawler that, at the time, Ensign George Herbert Walker Bush sunk during World War II. And they found the trawler relatively quickly. He had some extra time, and him and his wife hired a guide. It's a diving mecca, but instead of going to the pristine dive sites, he said, I want to see World War II wreckage. And the guide took him around and showed him wreckage. And the first thing they showed him was this B-24 wing in shallow water. And Pat asked the questions of, what happened to the aircraft and what happened to the aircrew. And the guy didn't have the answers, and he took it upon himself to start finding the answers. Went home, started researching, found out a lot about the losses in and around Palau, and started going back on his own, and realized, after getting caught in the jungle a couple times, that's probably not the safest thing to be doing by yourself. So he started bringing like friends, and that was the creation of the Bent Prop Project. And at that time, we do 1 mission a year, every year, self-funded, searching the waters and the jungles of Palau. And then fast forward after several years and lots of success, running into Mark Moline from the University of Delaware and Eric Terrell from the Scripps Institution of Oceanography, and their science and oceanography backgrounds, kind of, hey, you have the technology, we have the mission, we can work together here and do some incredible work. And that partnership was initially called the Project Recover, and we've since changed the name to Project Recover and growing the mission worldwide. So now it's not just Palau, 1 mission a year, it's multiple missions a year all over the world. Currently, there's a team in Croatia. We got another mission on the horizon in Denmark, plenty of work all over the Pacific, all over Europe, and believe it or not, we've even been to the Middle East. So there's a lot of work to do, but it just started with that, what happened to this airplane and what happened to the aircrew, and then a lot of initiative by an individual, and then really gathering like-minded people with similar interests and similar commitment to those that have made the ultimate sacrifice.
Now, by your account, there's some 80,000 unaccounted for servicemen that we know of. So it's a gigantic mission. How do you determine where to go, or where do you start? I guess it just seems like such a huge number. How do you narrow it down?
I think it starts with calling.
Yeah, I mean, it all starts with historical research, and there are a lot of factors that we used in order to develop what we call cases. There are 80,000 missing, but there are definitely a smaller number that we are building every day, where we have a lot of historical information. We have a safe and secure place with good diplomatic relations to go and do searching. And we start off at the archives with the action reports and the missing aircrew reports and individual, personnel files. And then we branch out from there, examining historical photographs and memoirs and newspapers and everything, in order to piece each part of the case together, so that we know where we want to go, we know where we want to look. And one of the things that we do is we try to build campaigns, much like what you saw in the film with Palau. We want to build a campaign around an area that has a lot of MIAs. And so we've targeted a few places like Italy, Federated States of Micronesia, Truk Lagoon, people may know from World War II, where we've done work in Papua New Guinea and the Solomons, places where lots of aircraft have gone down. And so we're able to build a profile and then stay in that country for several years, so that we get to know the people, we get to work with the people, they get to know and trust that we are only there to help return and repatriate the remains of these fallen airmen, and not just treasure hunters looking for something. We're there, we're serious, we're using high technology, archaeology, science, a little bit of machetes and digging, in order to put all the answers together.
So are most of the missions now water missions, or are you doing land as well?
We still do both. We do both terrestrial and water missions. Believe it or not, technology is advancing at a more rapid rate underwater. And those underwater sites there's a large number of them, and as technology has advanced and our capabilities advance, it's opening opportunities to find more and more sites and conduct recovery. But we are still doing land missions. The mission that Scott and I were just on was in a very, very, very dense jungle in Palau. So a lot of that machete work. Ultimately, some of these missions do come down to boots on the ground and eyeballs on what we're looking for. But yes, it's both. But a lot of our work now is in the water.
Okay. Scott, describe, going through the jungle and what you've got a general idea of where an aircraft wreck might be, but that's got to be difficult, even knowing where it is with GPS and everything else, to be able to hack your way through the jungle.
It is probably the most frustrating thing in the world to have aircraft parts that don't tell you the story you're looking to find. I was an aircraft investigator for years in the Marines, and I've done a lot of it. And I feel like that really lent some credence to the team and everything that we were doing. And I mean, it was baffling. I shot a short video for the Project Recover crew, and I did it very specifically for that because I wanted to demonstrate exactly what we were up against. It is the most amazing feeling in the world to be looking for a lost American. It's the most rewarding feeling in the world to be trying to find them. It's also a very strange feeling to be suspended 18 inches off the ground in mangrove, because that's how thick it is, and that's what you've got to do to get it. And so it was incredible. It was really wild. I've spent quite a bit of time in the South Pacific, and there was absolutely nothing like this last mission that I was on as far as terrain. It was intense. It was sporting.
And were you ultimately successful?
To a certain degree, yes, sir. I mean, we found quite a bit more than we thought, but we were missing some key pieces of the aircraft, and I'm still working on my report. I'm somewhat delinquent in that, but it's so big and it's so large, and I'm trying to do it the justice that it deserves. But there's pieces of the airplane that we're like, there's no doubt of what this is. There's no doubt of where this came from. I found serial numbers, I found part numbers. I was able to reference that across all the spectrums. We don't have any question about which aircraft and what aircraft, but gosh, we're still missing some stuff. And I mean, our nightly debriefs were super frustrating to me, because I would sit there in the room and be like, I don't know where the engine is. It's around. It's gotta be. It's a big piece. And so I would say that we were successful. We progressed the case. We moved it forward. We definitely have more to go off of. However, that particular MIA is still MIA, and we're working on that.
Good. Derek, before we get too far into the show, you want to show us the shirt you're wearing? Oh,
yeah, I'm wearing the Project Recover on a Mission shirt. I wore it specifically for CAF, and I tell you what, the first person that can reference where this shirt comes from or what this shirt references in the chat, we'll give a free shirt too. They can get one of these. So Leah will track that, and the first person that can, I'll even give you a hint. It's a film. It's an older film, but it's a film. So if you can make the reference, and once she has an answer, we'll tell where it came from, and then we'll collect that person's information and make sure he gets his or her hands on one.
Excellent. I guess I don't qualify.
Yeah, you were in the conversation earlier.
No.
I don't think any of us qualify.
Yep. We already have some questions coming in from the audience. So Henry's asking, when you discover an aircraft, is there any thought to recovering it and doing a restoration on it?
Yeah, for audiences like this is the frustrating answer. Our mission is the people, and the aircraft are the means to the people. And we search for aviators for the most part, although not exclusively, because it's a lot easier to find an aircraft that's been missing for 80 years than it is to find a person. Now, when we or other people conduct recoveries on this site, the goal is to find the osseous materials and other materials that can lead to an identification and repatriation of that missing or those missing Americans. And so the aircraft is torn apart to pieces many times. There's no thought in restoring it or anything like that. If somebody came along afterwards, they could try to go about that process, but that is not our mission. And for one thing, Navy Marine Corps aircraft are forever owned by just that, the Navy, Air Force, other side. But then we're also working in other nations, and it's just outside of our mission. So our full intention is the people associated with those aircraft and not the aircraft themselves.
Yeah, I like for these, especially for the aircraft that we're looking for underwater. I like to call it, they're basically tombstones. They're grave markers. There's something that is on the sea floor that we can actually use technology to find. They're the thing that is keeping hope, that person in that one space, so that we can hopefully bring them home. And they're beautiful, memories of the past and of World War II. And sometimes when you see them fully intact, it's absolutely amazing. But that's what they're best for us for, is to help us find these guys.
And for historical purposes, with the advancement of new technologies, we do document the sites, so photogrammetry and things like that, and create 3D models for them. Obviously, that's not restoring it and flying it again, but the history behind it is kept and maintained and documented.
Yes. Well, and part of some of the folks who've registered in advance had an opportunity to see the documentary, To What Remains, and in that we see actually how the technology works to help you locate some of the underwater wreckage. I mean, just using the underwater drone was absolutely amazing. The amount of time that it saved divers having to be underwater searching, and this drone just did it in a record amount of time.
Yeah, for some of us that have been around for a while, when we used to just do the get online and use your eyeballs and basic scuba underwater, this has advanced us into light years ahead. It's pretty amazing. But kind of going back to what Scott was talking about on the land side, we talk about GPS, and you just think, oh yeah, I can carry this GPS around and map our route and all this stuff in detail. It wasn't the case in that very, very dense mangrove. But we're exploring new technology on that side. But boy, underwater, it is advancing so quickly. We're going in places that 5 years ago we couldn't go to, and we're even thinking about going back and re-documenting some of the sites. To give you an example, when that film was made in 2014, 2015, at least the field work was filmed, that resolution of that side scan sonar was about 1 meter, and now it's 1 centimeter. And so Colin was just on a team up in Maine, and they were scanning the ocean floor there and documenting all the lost lobster traps, which actually is a very interesting mission, because they're still working lobster traps, even though they're not connected to anything. So lobsters are going in there and unfortunately passing, they're dying and feeding off of each other. But so that's actually a different mission that somebody else will handle potentially, but recovering those. But that's an idea of how it's advancing over 5, 6, 7 years. Now we can find things that small and smaller on the ocean floor.
Yeah, not having started with before the vehicles. I was lucky enough to come on board once. We were already using the AUVs. Now it's more like, well, you can't do. We only did 2 square kilometers today. Like, we should be doing 4. I don't know what's going on. So that's already like a year of diving or more, decade of diving. So we're excited to see how it goes.
A few more questions from the audience. Bill's wondering, what do you do if you encounter unexploded ordnance?
There's a number of things to consider safety-wise, and that, of course, is one of them. So before a mission, we'll explore and research whether their aircraft had released its ordnance or anything like that. But at times, of course, it is a factor, in which case we'll have to solicit somebody to render it safe, remove it, or something like that, or just leave it if it's not part of the equation. Of course, we'll just keep our distance. But it is a real threat, like a number of things, and so we handle that accordingly.
All right. Tim was asking, of the 80,000 missing, does that count any from ships or submarines, and is that part of your missions as well?
So that number does include from ships and submarines. So far as I understand, ships, those that went down with ships and submarines, the U.S. Navy considers those losses as buried at sea, or at least their final resting place. So in 2017 in Kiska, Alaska, we found half of the USS Abner Reed, which had been mined off of Kiska, Alaska, and had 70 sailors aboard there. Though that is their final resting place, and for us, it is our job to make sure to get the family the information, let them know what that where that location is, what it looks like, and all that kind of stuff, in order to answer some of those questions.
Gary Chambers was the first to respond with 12 o'clock high. So
Congratulations.
Gary's our shirt winner.
Make sure you give your information to Leah, and we'll get you one of these hard to get shirts.
Yeah, as you were saying,
I
there's
don't even have one.
limited edition shirt.
Yeah, there's only a few left.
Well, hopefully you have one in Gary's size.
I hope so.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the movie itself. What was the impetus to actually start the documentary?
Well, in 2014, a number of people joined us in Palau for the mission we were executing that year, and it included some dignitaries and VIPs that were just interested in our work, and one of them happened to be a gentleman named Dan Freakin, who thought it was important to document. And he owned a production company. He still owns a production company, and he started filming the work that year, and really fell in love with the mission and decided, this has to be fully documented and documented in the right way. So they got the field work done and started putting the film together, and it wasn't quite complete. And as these repatriations started to happen, they realized, we need to document this part of it and get the full story arc from search to discovery, ultimately to repatriation, which is the full intention of our mission. And so he just fell in love with the mission, so much so that not only did he document it with this incredible film, but he's now our chair and has been an incredible supporter of us over the years, and continues to be an incredible supporter of us. But they did an absolutely beautiful job, and we're very, very proud that they do such a really good job of highlighting the impact of this work and why it's important. It's not just about going to a beautiful place like Palau, Palau is absolutely beautiful, and diving some of the most beautiful spots in the world. Although the spots we dive aren't always the beautiful spots, because that's not where the airplanes hide. They're in the more swampy, murky spots, but there's still some beautiful footage out there, and we're very, very proud of it.
Well, I was taken by the fact that when we first talked about the documentary, and I got the link to watch it, I was expecting something that was going to be detailing the mission and underwater photography, and here's how we came across this, and all those things are in the documentary. But then, and whoever's inspiration was, it was wonderful. They bring in the human element, the family story, and that suddenly brings it home. This is not just a mission of going diving and trying out technology, but the mission of repatriating and closing the story on some of these families, that not having anyone who was in that position from World War II, I had no idea, that Uncle Bob was just a picture on the mantle, and everybody knew that he was lost in World War II. But then for you to be able to bring that entire story home was just absolutely incredible.
Yeah, they did an incredible job of really, really documenting that exactly, and that's the thing that we're the most proud of. And you hear that 80,000 number, and that's a large number, 80,000 plus, which not included in that is training losses and things like that aren't designated missing in action, although just as missing to their family. So let's say 100,000 missing Americans. Well, over 8 decades, that turns into thousands, if not millions, of family members that have this connection. And so every time we do one of these events, there's 1 or 2 MIA family members that approach us, and they describe the same thing. This ambiguous loss that occurred, and there's that void, the interruption of the grieving process, the changing of rules, and all that stuff that occurs in a regular changing of roles in a regular passing. It's interrupted when it's an MIA. They hold on to hope that this person's going to come home, that they're still alive, that they somehow survived. But to your point, every MIA family that we interact with has some sort of alter to that individual. They are truly that myth, and then when they're returned home, that myth becomes real, and everything that they've heard over the years, they have all those answers to the questions that they held on to, and it's passed from generation to generation and generations. The other thing that we really like is, even the youth and other people without MIA connections, like you mentioned, draw a connection to the humanitarian work and the community that this work develops.
Well, let's take a look at some of the clips from the film. Derek, this is what you claim is your favorite. Do you want to set up this piece we'll be seeing?
Yeah, there's so much to this clip, even though it's 60 seconds, but it's a discovery of a site. And if you saw the film, it's the Hool site in it, and Pat is describing the emotion in that discovery, and all of us that have participated in that have had similar experiences. And then as he cuts away, you have Flip Colmer kind of describing like what this is going to mean to families. They've held on to these questions, and soon they're going to have answers to those questions, and they don't even know it. And so I get goosebumps all the time. You see Pat reach out and touch the prop in the video, and there's elements to our work that always drive home the human piece of it. And it could be the prop on an aircraft that was driving that aircraft through the air before they were lost, or simple things like blue paint when you turn over a piece of aluminum in the jungle, or simple things like that you're like, wow, this is real. All this work is now paying off.
And then we come into the main debris field, and the first thing I see is a propeller. Finally, after 22 years, we are looking at Lieutenant Hool's Avenger. You're in 70 or 80 feet of water, and you just don't know whether you want to scream or cry.
Is victory. It's just victory. I mean, there's families that don't know what's going to happen to them now, because they're going to have a lot of questions answered finally after all these years.
Pretty awesome. Colin, how about you?
Yeah. So as Derek mentioned, a lot of the field work that was filmed in this is from 2014 and 2015, and I didn't start a project recover till 2016. But what I did, the parts where I did have a hand for this film was I helped put the book together for the Hool aircraft. So that's the book that Pat shows Doug Bergelin, and it means a lot to me for a lot of reasons. One, because I had a hand in that. Two, he didn't get the answers, all of the answers, right? He didn't get to bring his loved one home. It's one of the hard parts of what we do. We don't get to bring everyone home. We want to bring everyone home, but for some reasons, we're still out there. We're still looking. And but to see how even just the information, the research that's been done, the maps, the interviews, those are all connections from that MIA to that family that may have not have existed before. And so that's why it's really special to me when I can see actually a family member, really touched by just the book alone.
We're still looking for Lieutenant Hool because we know one parachute was seen, and we now know that parachute contained Dick Hool. Thank you. This is actually for you. We always assemble a book about the planes that we find, and it kind of goes from the beginning, more or less the beginning, describes the combat situation.
Oh my gosh.
And we were able to get at least one picture of him flying. You know, we go through the air action report, the photographs, and
That's the day of.
these are scenes that he would have seen, because this
There
had
was already things happening
Yes,
at that
yeah,
time there.
yes.
Wow. Oh, I can't wait to show this to my
and
family.
this is based on the interview I had with former President Bush, and so that's why we were able to get this kind of a description, was from him. And that's the grid map that they would have used, and this was the target area that he was going after. Then this is the autonomous underwater vehicle that found it.
And I think I was just dumbfounded by how much digging they had been doing. For 25 years, they've been trying to find a member of my family, and I didn't even know they were looking.
That was when I saw that clip in the documentary. The look on his face as Pat is explaining, the mission and what was happening. That was the one of the most emotional points of watching that. When just the look on his face, being overcome with all the emotion and having some of his questions answered, was just absolutely amazing. And it's really
the first time. It was emotional for me the first time, that I got to see that as well, because I wasn't there. I didn't get to see, that happened in person. And it's taken me a while to figure out exactly what about that moment, really, really grabs me. And, it's Doug's such a great guy. And I've had the honor of working with him since then to try to find little newspaper clippings about Hool and the crazy things that happened to him before he went missing. But anyway, it's just a special part for me, for sure.
Scott, what was your favorite?
So specifically, it was kind of interesting when I approached Derek years ago. Was like, I've got to be a part of this. This is great. And Derek goes, "Hey, it's really cool that we're friends and we were in the same unit. It's not up to me." And then I learned the process, of becoming a member and being a part of that. And I had an opportunity to talk with Pat. And I had never spoken with him before. I was very familiar with who he was as far as founding the organization, but I'd never spoken with him. We spent 2 hours on the phone. And Pat is very, very calm, very mild-mannered, but very mission-oriented and intense when it comes to finding these. And so one of the things that I felt like I lent to the organization was part of that aircraft crash investigator stuff that I've done a whole lot of. And specifically with my World War II knowledge, I got my A&P through the CAF, working with Centex Wing, and so parts, what they look like, all this other stuff. And Pat pulled me to the side before we even started my first mission. He was like, "Hey, just remember, look for what doesn't belong." And I went, "Oh, yeah, you're right, absolutely." And there's a part later in the movie that actually talks about how looking for what doesn't belong, looking for a shape, looking for this, looking for that. This particular one, though, was when Pat saw a parachute, and a burn parachute at that, and instantly knew what it meant, what it was. And then you start to find pieces that aren't what you think that they are, that turn out to be other things that are very significant. And that was always something that was in the forefront of my mind the entire time that I was out there. And even when I wasn't out there, I would be dreaming about it. I used to tell the guys and the girls on the team in the morning, I'd be like, "Look, I dreamt about this. I don't know why that is, but I want to run with that." And I felt somewhat good that I wasn't alone in that. There were other people dreaming about it too. But you put yourself into this mindset where, I don't want to say you're trying too hard, but you're trying to make sure you're not. And just making sure you notice the shapes, notice what things are, take a breath, take it easy. There's no hurry. What is it? Why would it be there, kind of thing.
The first thing that I came across, it was an open parachute in the back of the airplane. And the shroud lines were all tangled up in the wreckage. And I started pulling on the parachute, and the parachute was burnt. Somebody was struggling to get out and didn't make it. our Palawan guy Joe stuck his hand in and he brought out what he thought was a stick or a pipe or something, and I saw it, and I knew immediately it was a human tibia, and I really started connecting, aluminum, bone, families.
He had been looking for that aircraft for 10 years at that point. And then it was another couple of years before the identifications were made positive, before my dad actually got the final word. This is definitely the crash site. Your father was definitely on that plane, and he lost his life on a mission, September 1944.
As you're looking back at the film now, what do you hope the audience will take away?
Well, I hope that the audience looks at this and I hope for a couple things. They realize that this mission is important. It's you swear an oath to the Constitution and you don the cloth of our nation, and we as a collective nation make a promise to that individual and their families that should they fall in battle, that we'll do everything that we can to bring them home. And the context of war, doesn't always provide that opportunity, but that promise doesn't have an expiration date. And so we're going to do everything that we can to keep that promise that's made. And it's not just our mission, it's every American's mission. And so we hope that they walk away with that, but at the same time, we hope that they're inspired, that they'll come forward if they have information related to a lost loved one or anything like that, or if they can support the mission in some way. But also, we hope that it drives them to do something substantial and impactful in their own community. Not everybody can travel the world and traipse the jungles or search the oceans for lost Americans, but you can make a difference in your own community in a positive way. And so that's one of the big things that I hope for.
Yeah, I want to add on to that as well, and what Derek was saying about awareness. I mean, for me, it's we're so wrapped up in this every day. I think we often forget how, believe it or not, how few people really know that this happens, that there are people out there doing this in order to help these families. And not only that, but from my perspective as the historian and helping to build our, we have I think we're up to almost 700 active cases that we're, actively researching, pursuing, and analyzing, representing, I think, almost 3,000 now MIAs for our little organization. And we want to hear from you. We want to hear from those who have an MIA in their family, and maybe you never really thought about it. A lot of people think, and just because of the way, my grandmother's older brother was killed, and we didn't want to talk about that, let alone someone who went missing. A lot of times that chapter is shut, the book is shut, and it's not talked about anymore. And so we, the awareness, I hope, brings people who have MIAs to contact us so that we can, if we aren't already researching that loss, maybe we can give you some information that you don't have. But either way, so that your MIA is counted, we can put them in our growing database and make sure that we can help keep their memory alive.
Scott, anything you'd like to add? Nope, I think you might be on mute, Scott.
I might be on mute. Sorry. Talking with no noise. The totality of people and things and that matter, this is at the top. Like Derek said, there's no expiration date on that promise. And that's something that, I always believed. I was like, okay, if everything goes bad and this is a bad time, at some point, sometime, I'm going to go home. And I really took a lot of solace in that. I took a lot of comfort in that. So this, gosh, and like Colin was saying, this is it. A lot of it is closed-lipped. A lot of it is it's too painful to touch. And in all honesty, that's not only understandable. It's expected. In the same regard, reach out, let people know. I mean, I didn't get to talk to my grandfather, who's a World War II sailor. My dad's a Vietnam Marine. We have a long lineage of doing this. We all felt the same. Hey, it's okay. If it goes bad, we'll get brought home. I mean, when I joined the organization, I told Derek, I was like, man, if you guys need your floor swept, I'm the guy. Just to say I had a hand in it, because I don't know of anything else that matters as much.
Yeah, and it is amazing for the families. And a thing that was mentioned several times by family members is, I didn't know anyone was even looking. And is that a part of your philosophy as well? Knowing that not all the missions are successful, that you don't want to have a family member and say, yes, we're going to go find your relative, and then not be able to. So is it more anonymous? Is that kind of a better way of approaching it?
That's definitely our philosophy, is do no harm, right? So protect the families. And so we don't want to establish false hope with any families. And our general way about going about business is just to do the work. We don't reach out to families. However, if families reach out to us, we don't keep information from them either. We don't keep secrets from them or anything. But of course, we never solicit them directly for anything to do this mission, and we never make a promise that we could bring their loved one home. But we're going to do everything that we can. And I wanted to add on to a little bit of what Colin and Scott said. Is I mentioned earlier, we interact with these MIA families. There's always at least one family member, if not multiple family members, at these events that we do, and they all kind of walk up and, I don't know if this is important or not, but I have an MIA in my family. And they're like, well, no, that's very important. This is exactly what we do. We do this for you. And there's always this, not always, but many times, this feeling of, well, you're not doing this for me, but we're doing it because, and there's a lot of us. There's three faces on this screen, but this is a very interdisciplinary work, and every single piece of the puzzle is vital to the accomplishment of the mission. And to even rewind a little bit more, Colin and his team interact with hundreds of MIA family members every year, and many times it's just an acknowledgement and a confirmation that their loved one is lost. And this could be the first time that that's ever happened beyond, a telegram that the family received in the 40s, and they were still holding on to that hope and a little bit of information. But to your point, Steve, knowing that somebody is doing this on their behalf without them asking or even knowing about it sends a message that, it's a message of community, and it's keeping that promise. And that means a lot to people in this country. And we're just going to keep on doing it because it's important. It's very important.
You mentioned the word community, which reminded me another scene toward the end of the film, and that is one of the repatriated is going to the cemetery, and there's they pass by a school, obviously a grade school, but all the children are out, and they all have flags, and people in the community are lined up along the route, and it becomes more than just that family. It suddenly reaches into a local community and has a tremendous impact as well.
The impact of the work goes from the individual all the way to the national level, and in ways that you don't expect. So, the promise that we make is typically kept by our active duty service members, those that are fighting alongside of those that were lost. And so it's important to them. And as a veteran, it's important to me to keep this promise. And as kind of Scott outlined, that future generation that we expect to protect our nation, they want to know that this promise is being kept. And then the family is kind of more obvious, but there's this extended family that may have never met before, and we've seen it over and over again, that comes together and not only memorializes but celebrates this return of this MIA. We see that this is the second wave of their impact. The first is the freedoms that we live with every single day, but then when they return home, there is this unifying event. Communities come together organically to acknowledge that sacrifice. And again, up to the national level, it's that promise is kept. And so we grow trust in our nation. And all of those things are vital today. And believe it or not, those impacts are paralleled in these host nations as they participate in having and being part of this mission. And we wouldn't be able to do it without their support.
Another interesting thing that comes out in the film as well is the villagers that you talk to, but also the Palau itself and the community around there that they're looking for answers as well.
Yeah, they're war torn, and these are the wounds of war. That we can go to war and we can fight war pretty well, but many times when war ends, we just think, okay, it's over, let's go away, and we still have to heal. And I mean, World War II are all these stories, and that's more than 7 decades now, in some cases more than 8 decades later, and we're still healing from those wounds of war. And definitely where the war took place on the soils overseas, they're still healing from those wounds.
Well, for each of you, what is something that kind of sticks out in your mind as something significant that's happened, whether it's a person that you met through one of your expeditions, or particular hacking through the jungle, or making a dive, or something that really sticks out in your mind as something that I don't know, you never thought would happen to you? How about you, Scott?
Yeah. It's funny. Like we talked about, I've done quite a few investigations. I've been a part of that. I was brought in a little bit because of that. And the first day that we went out, Derek brought me over to what we called the North Gun, which was a machine gun that we had found. It was just on the north side of our search. And I was looking at it, and I never in a million, and I've seen a bunch of Browning M2 machine guns. I've seen a lot of them. I've fired a lot of them. I've done it from the sides of aircraft. I've done it from the sides of helicopters. I'm very familiar. I saw that one, and I immediately was jazzed with a whole bunch of adrenaline, and I'm buzzing, like this. And I want to get into it, and I want to do more, and I want to look at more stuff, and I want to go out there, and I want to see more. It's day 1, minute 4. And I just never in a million years did I think that I was going to be in the mangrove jungle of Palau, on the far side, looking at an M2 that's been there, and doesn't look like an M2 on the surface, but does if you spend just a few minutes with it. But I remember sitting there thinking, there's no way I would have ever predicted this for myself in a million years. Never.
How about you, Colin?
Yeah, it's hard to pick one. So I'm going to cheat. I'm going to pick 2 because I don't know. There is certainly this crazy feeling. I mean, I'll never forget. We were in Truck Lagoon. I was with Pat, and we were bouncing from these little islets, islet to islet. There's a storm coming in. There's a sun. The sun's going down, and here we are sitting on the beach, just staring out and just like thinking, wow, I can't believe that I get to be a small part of being able to do this work in order to, help bring these guys home. And look, it's not the days that you're muddy, wet, tired, freezing cold, whatever it is. It's just one of those beautiful moments where you get to sit and sort of appreciate it. And then the second was the exact funeral that you were talking about, Steve, in Pennsylvania. It was my first community, the funeral that I got to go to that was being buried in his hometown rather than Arlington Cemetery. And I didn't really know what to expect. I had heard some cool stories and about, families getting together. But when we arrived at the airport, it was freezing cold that day, 38 degrees, maybe 40 degrees in November, I think. Derek, I can't remember the name of that group, the Patriot Riders, the motorcycles, guys on motorcycles in the rain, in 40-degree weather, escorted us for 2 hours, escorted the remains, for 2 hours back to the hometown. And we pulled into the city, and the whole town, guys coming from the factory, VFW, schools, churches, everyone, the whole town was outside in this absolutely miserable weather, to recognize this person who had gone missing so long ago, and to see the entire community come together like that, it was just one of the most heartwarming things I've probably ever experienced. And I hope that, you know, we can bring more of these guys home in order to bring them home for their families and, you know, for the communities, as Derek so put it well.
I think I'll answer that in 3 parts, just because, and I'm not trying to help you, Colin, but the first part of it is this kind of collective thing. Is I've been a member of a fighter squadron, I've been in multiple fighter squadrons, I've been special operations teams, but this is the team I'm probably the most proud of being a part of. It's just amazing that you have people that demonstrate initiative and innovation and commitment and perseverance and stuff like that, all towards the same mission, and they don't have to be here. They can walk away at any time, and every single piece is important. And so that's very special to me. And I mentioned earlier in my introduction that this is the second part, and it is very, very difficult to pick a moment, but and I've told this story over and over again, and I still get goosebumps from it. But I mentioned I met Pat at a World War II reunion when I was in VMFA 121. And he was at the reunion because 121 flew out of Peleliu during World War II and was looking for sites. And it took me a while to go on my first mission. Then the first discovery that I was a part of was a 121 Marine. And so, like, what are the chances of that, you know, ever happening? I still get goosebumps. And, you know, I've told that story thousands of times. But that kind of brings me to really what Colin and Scott talked about. I say people go through 3 phases when they're a member of our organization. The first phase is, you know, you go through the interview process and you become a member, and this is the right thing to do. It kind of gives you this sense of purpose if that's missing from your life. And then that's the first phase. And then at some point you're going on a mission, you're participating in a mission, being a part of it, and there's a discovery. And that could be the first mission, like in my case, or it could be, you know, way down the road after a lot of hot days in the jungle or cold days on the water or whatever it happens to be. But now all that blood, sweat, and tears and hard work becomes a reality. This is real. We found the site that somebody hasn't seen for decades. And then that third phase is exactly what Colin outlined, in that witnessing the memorial and celebration and watching communities come together. And Arlington National Cemetery is absolutely amazing and incredible in its own way. But Portage, Pennsylvania, St. Joe's, Michigan, Findlay, Ohio, all these other places around the country, they're all unique, but they're all very similar in the sense of families, community coming together organically. You see the impact of this work, and if you were missing purpose at any point before that, you found it. And you know, you can imagine how lives are changed with these families and the communities around them. But the impact is just as much for us to bear witness and to participate. Is incredibly special. And, you know, I can get hit by a bus tomorrow and I'm content. I feel like I played a decent part in this world. Not that I'm hoping for that, but there's still a lot of work to do, but hopefully I get to witness more of those events as we move forward, and all of our members get to witness that. So yeah, very, very special stuff.
All right, we've got a few more questions from the audience. Here's one. Henry's wondering if you have ever thought of searching for the remains of Amelia Earhart.
Knew that one was coming. Who wants? So, well, that's a difficult case. So to answer that, I'd say we have some cases that have a lot better information with a very higher likelihood of success. So we'll start there, and if we get to Amelia at some point, you know, we'll go after it. But right now, we don't have really good information on Amelia.
Okay.
Yeah, no, we'll keep it at that. From our case prioritization standpoint, you know, we really like to see historical lost information so that we know exactly where to put the robots in the water. Like I said, they cover many square kilometers, but not that many. As I've been made fun of for saying before, the ocean is very large. A lesson I have learned since starting this, staring at something on your Google Earth satellite images is a little different from being out there in person. So yeah, I hope she's found, but not on our list at the moment.
If we had the resources that the folks that look for her have, we could make a significant impact.
There you go. Oh, well,
we could find places to look. Don't get me wrong. I just
well, then let's go to the other ocean. What about the 19 Avengers that were lost off Florida in the famed Bermuda Triangle?
Same problem.
Again?
Same problem with it.
Same problem. Although we'd probably get to those before we get to Amelia, I would think. But
there are some people doing some work down there with autonomous vehicles, and there's a lot of training losses down there. And I think that goes actually to this part where there is an official list of the missing in action, and those guys. I'm not sure if those guys are on that list because sometimes depending on the kind of mission they were on, but most of the training losses out there are not on that list, and then therefore they are not part of the U.S. government's mandate to repatriate. But we, of course, and I know the people who work, for the government organizations know that the family members are still missing their loved one, and so we do have lots of training losses. We're building since the pandemic. We really took a look inward toward the United States. And there's a lot of training losses out there. There's also a lot of human activity around our country, and so there's a lot of challenges when it comes to looking for those guys as well.
Do you have any depth limitations when you're diving?
Robots, for the most part, don't. But yes, there are limitations depending on the type of diving that we're utilizing or the divers that we're utilizing. But kind of going back to the technology and advancement of things over time, when we were doing this or starting this, we were using basic scuba. Now we've brought on technical divers, rebreather divers, and one of our primary partners, Legion Undersea Services, that does the work for our recovery using surface supply diving. And those guys are absolutely amazing. Most of them are former Navy divers that actually dove at some of the sites that we located and did the recovery when they were active duty, and then had the opportunity to work with us now. And they've advanced our capability incredibly on the recovery side. But then even with the U.S. Navy and their experimental dive team, now we're getting down really, really deep. But as you go deeper, it presents more and more challenges, more difficult environments to work in. But I tell you what, I would not have fathomed that we'd be working in the area that we're working at today 5-10 years ago. And it just seems like it's going deeper and deeper and deeper. More technology is pushing us deeper, and the ability to work with that technology also is expanding. So, adding arms and other things and taking samples and doing other scientific work with those robots is advancing our mission significantly to far greater depths.
Yeah, we even have to continue to reanalyze cases that we have because we've ruled them out because they were, let's say 300, 400 feet deep, or, reliably that deep. And we're having to go back and sort of say, now, wait a second, if they're doing, 220, 230, 240, start pushing the limits, and then what robotics will help us do in the future. It's an expense, but we could probably push the limit real far.
Good. Are you ever able to give families any pieces or parts from an aircraft? And what do you do if you find any personal items?
So we don't recover if and when we do a recovery. We don't take any artifacts from the site. The site's protected. And when a recovery operation occurs, the material that's collected is osseous material, of course, and then any artifacts that can lend to the identification. So you think dog tags, watches, rings, other things that can point to who it is. We'll collect those things, and they're transported to a lab either in Nebraska or Hawaii for the official identification to occur. All other items remain on the site unless it would be some sort of environmental damage. You mentioned unexploded ordnance, bringing somebody to render that safe. But even things like, an aircraft that's been underwater for 80 years could still have fuel on it. And, so if we want to clean that up. So there is this environmental impact in a positive way. that can occur from this work, but any parts of the aircraft that don't lend to the identification stay on site.
Okay. How protective are people in the native regions where you're looking for this? I know in Palau that it seems to be they're very open and wish, wanting to help, but have there been areas that have been less receptive to your efforts?
Well, I mean, some places we can't access because of the political dynamic, so if you think about North Korea, we're not doing any work there, or other places where there might be a threat. But the places that we do work, we have strong relationships with those countries, or semi-strong relationships with those countries. And even if those are in questions, we're a humanitarian effort, so they're very receptive to this work and supportive of it, and provide the appropriate permits and everything like that. We do have to go through that process, not only in the United States, but also in the host nation, to ensure that we are approved to do the work. We're not just, bulldozing our way in and starting to dig or anything like that. We're getting the appropriate permits. We're bringing the appropriate personnel, whether that's archaeologists, anthropologists, things like that, and making sure that we're doing it right. Because for the most part, kind of like what Colin was talking about, we're trying to do campaigning efforts in certain areas. So we want to be welcome back to do the next one. And so we're not going to burn any bridges. And we try to bring them in ways that we can to support the mission. And many times they're very, very supportive.
Yeah, we've in general, we've had a lot of support from overseas. And that's something that we expressly seek, partially because it's not just sort of like, you stay over there, we're going to search over here. It's very much, they know this place. They know the land. They know the water. They know the people that you need to talk to. And, we want to let them know that we're serious, that we're not here to destroy anything. We're not here to, disrupt anything. We want to search. We want to find the MIAs. And a lot of, places you get, they really understand culturally. They understand this idea of bringing your loved ones back home, finding them and bringing them back home. And then there's also groups, non-governmental groups that we work with in many countries overseas who, there are probably better Air Force historians in Hungary that I've ever met. These guys know, and I say U.S. Air Force, these guys know the history. There's a lot of Europeans that are very, very good at that stuff, and it's really great to sort of tap into their knowledge and their knowledge of the place as well. Yeah.
Good.
Steve, I want to point out with the fast facts that you have up now, I just talked to our media team to update that, because the countries are 21 plus now, well past 60 aircraft, more than 200 MIAs. So I want to make sure we get full credit.
Good. That was going to be my next question. Is we've got that up from your media kit, but I'm sure that those numbers have gone up since then. So
the good thing is they're growing numbers,
yes.
Growing in a positive way. And Colin mentioned, 700, close to 700 aircraft now in the database.
Yeah, those pluses are doing a lot of work in this one, yeah. So that's good. That's good.
Well, in the few moments that we have before we wrap up, how does someone get involved? How does someone be like Scott and join it? Either personally, or how can other people support the organization if they're maybe not able to go out on a mission?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, this is every American's mission, and not everybody can, traipse the jungles or dive in waters around the world, or just has the time to do stuff. But everybody can support through from their couch at home, and it all starts at projectrecover.org. They go to projectrecover.org, and they can express their interest in being a member and volunteering and starting that process. If they're an MIA family member, they can request and share information through that platform, and then they'll be connected to the right people in that way. And of course, we are a nonprofit, and we depend on the generous charity of the public. If they want to make a donation, they can do it there as well. And if we need to talk more about that, they can contact us and we can talk about that. We're also on all the social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram. We have a Twitter, although we're not really active on that, and LinkedIn. So if they like it, please follow us. And when they start sharing this incredible video that you guys are creating, tag us and we'll like them.
Excellent. Any final thoughts tonight before we wrap up? Scott, start with you.
Gosh, that's a lot. And that, you know, that's part of the reason that drew me to it is it's a lot, right? It's a bunch. It's heavy, but not in a bad way. I always viewed my mission in life to, like Derek talked about earlier, you know, he get hit by a bus and he's done well, right? Just wanted my time to matter. Just wanted my time to matter. And like I said earlier, I can't think of anything that matters more. So when I found out this was actually a thing by running into one of my old bosses in a torn down ready room that we used to share, like I couldn't wait to be a part of it. And my personal mentality is whatever the job that they need me to do, I'll do. Like I said, if it's sweeping, cool, I can sweep. You know, if it's taking out trash, I can do that. If it's licking envelopes and putting stamps and mailing, whatever it is, I'm on board with it. It's probably the most rewarding thing I've done outside of being in the Marines, and it competes with a lot of that too. It's the most rewarding thing I've done just to be a part of it, just to be able to have my name attached to it. So, I mean, for those that are interested in that, it was the CAF that started this for me. I was a huge World War II Warbird guy. I was just crazy about it. I was very upset when I was 12 years old and I realized I actually couldn't pilot a B-17 in combat. I thought that was messed up and not fair. And you know, fast forward 20 years and I'm piloting a B-25 and flight engineering a B-25 out of San Marcos, Texas. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Apparently it wasn't that bad. But that knowledge, that base, that interest, that, you know, I did my whole undergrad work in that. It was all there and it led me to this. And now when I show up with Derek and talk with Colin and work with the other guys, I'm not just there as somebody who just wants to help, which I'm glad to be there for, but I actually can lend something to it because I've got a whole wealth of knowledge and specifically with aircraft and aircraft parts. So I don't know. It's hard to quantify a final thought into one. It kind of goes in a circle. It matters, and when you participate, it really feels like it matters. And in all honesty, man, to be able to be just a small part of somebody coming home, that was huge for me.
Alan, how about you?
Scott, I hope you didn't get into any low-level strafing. You know, you said you were in air combat with the B-25. I hope that's not the case. We'll put some liability disclaimer.
Wanted to be in air combat. Wanted to. I definitely swung a machine gun on a B-25 out of a waist window. However, that's as far as it's gone.
Excellent. Excellent. I mean, one of the best parts, I mean, outside of the mission itself is all of the amazing skills and multidisciplinary people that we get to work with, because it takes all those different perspectives. And that's one thing that I learned from Pat right from the beginning. Never discount someone's perspective. Everyone has a unique perspective, and you never know what they're going to see that you're going to miss. I try to pride myself in not missing things, and yet it happens all the time. And so I really love this team. I mean, Derek, you know, I didn't serve, and so I didn't have the great Marine Corps team behind me, but this is definitely the best team that I've been a part of. Final parting thoughts: if you have an MIA family member, head to our website. We have a contact page there that'll put you directly in touch with myself and our family outreach team. If you know a lot, you may have the key. You never know what you have. It's been interesting. We've found an aircraft and been able to talk to the family members to say, hey, we found this aircraft, and they said, oh, we have this letter here that talks about it. You know, where he crashed. You never know what you may have. So if you have a MIA family member, contact us. We want you to be counted, keep their memory alive. And maybe the most we can do is information, or maybe we can, try to go out there and search. And Steve and the Commemorative Air Force, thank you. Can't wait to go out and see some of the aircraft here soon.
Good. And Derek?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate our gratitude and my personal gratitude for having the opportunity to again work with CAF. Well, Google's
try again in a few seconds.
Our gratitude to CAF for coming back. We've been able to work with you a few times, and sharing this with your community and your audience is very special to us. So I just want to express my gratitude and our collective gratitude to CAF and those your members for the work that you do and including us in it. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone who's been joining and watching tonight. We appreciate you sticking with us. And again, if you just take a minute and click that like, subscribe, or follow button, and we'll be able to let you know about future shows. And as always, if you have ideas for topics that you'd like to hear more about, send Leah Block an email at media@cafhq.org. Again, thank you to Derek, Colin, and Scott from Project Recover for sharing the documentary and their mission with us. And please support them in any way you can. So until next time, I'm Steve Buss, and this is Warbird 2.
Thank you, everybody.